used to do it. We used to wait until it got cold and then you hang them in the barn. Put a couple bed sheets over the top of it. You know, ones that Mom won't get too upset about. Sorry? How long was this hanging? Okay, good question. Oh man, that's a big question. Okay, different animals, you hang them for different purposes. And is that where you were going with your question? Or are you just curious?
I was just curious how long before you have to refrigerate.
Yeah, so if I were a USDA inspected facility, I would need to probably have this in a room like this, in this ambient temperature, probably less than an hour. You're constantly checking the temperature, but the center of the meat needs to be less than 40 degrees Fahrenheit. Okay. So you got some time, and especially with as much fat as we have on this pig, we have some time. So I wouldn't be too concerned about this. Yeah. So it came from refrigeration. Question about aging and hanging. So hang time is different from aging. Well, it's along the lines of aging. Aging is important. So post-mortem aging in refrigeration helps with tenderness. Pigs and sheep, you really at most you need like 5 days, and that's the optimal tenderness that you'll get out of it. After that, it's just old meat, and you're losing yield. So most pigs, I would just say, cut them up as soon as they're cold. So give them 24 hours refrigeration, get them cold, cut them up, package them, go. Because of yield and freshness. The sooner you can get it into final packaging and then also freezing, if that's the final destination, the better off you're going to be with longevity of that meat. Okay? Beef, ideal or optimal, not ideal, but optimal aging is about 14 days. Now, some places will do that in carcass form. You hang the whole carcass. My recommendation for those who have the capability is to cut the center part, the middle meats out, age those in vacuum packaging, because you're going to minimize your yield loss, evaporative loss. It's a great way of storing meat. Still in refrigeration, but then process all your end meats, because the end meats are either going to go into slow cooking roasts for the most part, or hamburger. And we don't need to age, because aging improves tenderness. That's the purpose of it. Smaller animals don't need a whole lot of aging. So there's guys out there that are trying to age a gut shot deer for 2 weeks, right? In September. It will be tender. It will be. Yeah, it'll almost be a puddle. Right? So process is quickly as a recommendation for the smaller animals. Yeah. the connective tissue, like the silvery outer layer of this muscle right here, that's collagen. As animals mature, slaughter most of our market animals at a relatively young age, which is really cool for pigs because we can grow these to 300, I'm guessing it's probably about 320, 330 pounds, and get a pig this size, okay, in 6 months, 7 months. That's amazing. That's a freaking miracle, really, okay? We have beef right now, commercial-sized beef cattle, that we are slaughtering at 1,600 pounds at 18 months of age. What does it take to impress you? Like, that is impressive. That's a miracle right there. So, anyway, we're growing these animals pretty quick, and what that does is it does lead to being able to get more yield per animal, and you're going to get a younger animal at market weight. It should be better for tenders. Good. What's an old pig? Probably over a year old. Yeah, you're starting to get into the pretty mature animals. Sausage pigs, yeah. Yeah, pretty much the whole thing. You want a sausage or stew that sucker. So, it's that time, so I'm going to go ahead and start cutting, but please ask questions. Sound good? Okay. Where's Rob? You had to leave him at home? Somebody have to work today? Okay. All right. So, side of pig, which side is this? It's the left side. It's as you were the pig or as you were riding it, unless you're riding it wrong, right? So you would ride it up here. This would be the top of it. The head was right about in this area right here. The tail would have been out here. We have the hind leg and the shoulder, the back, and the side. It's not a belly until you remove the ribs, okay? So, primals of a pig. There are 4 primals on a pig. The leg, it's not a ham until you cure it, right? It's not a ham until you cure it. So this is the leg. However, in commercial jargon, we do often say fresh ham. It's not correct. That's kind of like saying like a bull cow, right? You know those baby bull cows out there? Baby bull cows? Yeah, okay. So it's a fresh leg. We have the loin section. This is the term, eating high on the hog. Have you ever heard that term? Literally, back in the day, if you were the wealthy people, you would eat high on the hog. And then the poor people ate this part down here, which eventually became the belly, which eventually became bacon. Now, where's the most valuable part of the pig? Right here. And you can get loins for $1.50 at Costco. It's incredible. Okay, I teach a lot of my college students that like modern day survival skills. If you want meat in your diet, it's not chicken that's going to be your cheapest bet because chicken comes with bone and skin and feathers and all kinds of other stuff sometimes. It's pork, yeah. You buy pork loins and it's almost 100% edible, other than the little bit of purge that's going to come out of the vacuum bag when you open it up. So, loin. Side, which will eventually become the belly, and then the shoulder. And the shoulder is broken up into 3 main sections. We have the jowl, we have the picnic, that's this lower section right here, and then the butt, which is kind of funny, right? Kind of funny. Isn't the head right here? Does that mean it's a butt head? There's actually a historical reason to that. Let's hear it. Let's hear it. So, during colonial times, early on, prior to the United States being the United States, this is like threading a needle. During colonial times, out in Massachusetts and Maine and all that area, New England, the packers out there, literally the reason they're called packers is they took meat and they packed it into barrels with salt, okay? That was a great way of shipping product for the British Empire at that time, which was expanding the United world, the entirety of the world. They needed meat, okay? The colonies was the meat source. They were the butchers because we had a ton of resources. We put it into animals. We killed those animals. We would pack the meat into barrels, but you couldn't fill a whole barrel this big full of meat. That'd be too heavy. You filled short barrels that were called butts, literally. And so, this section that I'm going to cut out comes out in a nice little cube, and they fit really well into those packed barrels called butts. That's why they were called the Boston butt, literally out of the packers in Massachusetts. Isn't that crazy? Yeah, this is meat science. Like, we're not that creative. We just call it what it is. Okay? All right, so the butt, shoulder, and then the picnic shoulder and the jowl. So, first couple things we're going to go ahead and cut on this piggy. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to take this hind leg off right here. The way we do that is we find this bone. This is called the H bone. A-I-T-C-H, not the letter H. Okay? H bone, Old English term for edge. If you look at it, it's the edge of the leg. H, edge. It's the H of the leg. You kind of speak a little Irish. Okay? We're going to use the rule of thumb today. We're going to go one thumb's width off of the H bone, A-I-T-C-H, not the letter H, right about there. And what I'm trying to do is cut this leg so that when I cut through it and I stand it up, this hind shank should stand up like a flagpole. Yeah, it should be pointing straight up to the ceiling. Okay? So right off of there, I'm going to cut perpendicular to the direction of that leg, and then I should be able to stand it up, and it's going to point right up to the ceiling. Okay? That's kind of the ideal way of going about it. I'll go ahead and cut through a little bit of soft tissue. I'll use my saw. You can see, so I travel with the blade reversed so that it's harder to, cut up my cushions on my pickup truck. And then I flipped it around. Key about a meat saw, the teeth should be pointing down first. You will be working at it for a very long time with it. And they should be pointing forward. Your power should be in the forward stroke. And so we're cutting through some of that hip bone. Did you hear that difference? Okay. Meat cutting, you're going to cut a little bit through the bone with the saw, but the saw makes jagged cuts, and the knife makes smooth cuts. What are these called? Breaking knives, right? Okay. I have other jokes, but there's a lot of children in the audience today, so I'm not going to go there. All right, and standing up like a flagpole. Okay. This eventually, we'll go ahead and cut this guy all the way down into boneless pieces. We'll do that later. But this is what you would start with if you were going to make a ham. Okay? So there's the leg sitting there. Next thing I'm going to do is go ahead and take the shoulder off. Now, there's a lot of theories in where you break the shoulder. U.S. commercial style is you find the very first rib and you cut between the first and second rib. And that's very common. I cheat a little bit. The reason I do that is because I like big shoulder roasts, and I don't really care quite as much about the chops that come up here. Okay, so I'm going to cheat a little bit and get a little bit bigger shoulder roast. Now, I lose a little bit on the side, on the belly, but I don't think it's that much to worry about. So I'm going to go ahead and cut between the second and third rib. Is that okay with everyone? Yeah. Thank you. I appreciate the feedback here. This is good. Okay, so we go 1, 2, 3, cut between the second and third rib bones. And that gives me a little bit bigger shoulder. The reason I like those shoulders so much, these are set it and forget it items in the crock pot. You want to feed a lot of people very easily with very little effort and on a good budget, or on a budget. Pork shoulders in the crock pot. Pork shoulders in a slow cooker. Or if you're into barbecue smoking, that's amazing on the smoker. That section right there. Okay, so I've cut the shoulder away. All right, then we're going to come back to this whole side, but let's work on the shoulder for a minute. And again, if you can't see, you're welcome to come up a little closer and see. I'm going to go ahead and take out the neck bones next. Okay. So this is called a boning knife. This is called a breaking knife. Yeah, you're excited, aren't you? You want to do this for me? No? All right. I'm scared to cut your
I'll do it for you.
You'll do it for me? Well, how about I do this one, you'll do the next one, okay? All right, so the neck bones actually come down and contain a little bit of thoracic cavity. That's the rib bones right here. We have a little bit of sternum that we're going to cut away as well. So there's the point of the sternum. I'm trying to leave as much meat behind as I can. Slide up underneath here. Oh, by the way, I'm Phill. Hi, Phill. I'm from the University of Idaho. I am a meat scientist. Yes, that is a real thing. I say so because it's on my business card. It's on my business card, so it must be real. It must be a real thing. So anyway, I love cutting meat. Usually I'm working in beef, but today we're going pork. And I did this on purpose because I know there's a lot of folks out there that are probably raising backyard pigs. And maybe, you get to the point where it's in this form, and then it's like, then what? Then what do we do? So I just want to give you a few ideas and my philosophy on this. And so as we go through today, we'll talk about all that. So we're getting to the neck bones. These are the cervical vertebrae, the neck bones. I'm coming from the back side right here. You see these little points? By coming from the back side, I get to cut into those little points and get a lot more meat off. And so I'm not leaving quite as much meat on the bone. Okay? There's that neck bone right there, and I can go like this. It's like Thoracic Park. If you're keeping up, that too was a joke in a joke. All right, so the neck bones are actually pretty fun. You can cut these little guys off. You get a little bit more rib bones, or you just sit and whittle on these and get a little bit more sausage meat off. Okay? I'm going to set these over here. Make a little pile. Okay, so neck bones are off. Now, I'm going to go ahead and take this jowl off. You take the jowl off at what's called the ear notch. So this is what, so pigs don't have a very long neck, right? Or at least they should not. If you have a pig with a really long neck, it might not be a pig. Okay, so, like, double check. Right? Could be a giraffe. Are you raising giraffes up here now? Why not? Right? Okay, so we're going to find this ear notch. That's where the head was removed, but they also got well into the jowl, which is great. I love the jowl. Anybody ever had jowl bacon or made jowl bacon? Oh, game changer, right? It's a religious experience. Oh my gosh, it's so good. So good. All right, so we're going to come at the ear notch and cut that jowl off. Okay? Now I cut like that just so you can kind of see it. But all right, so there's that jowl. Lots of fat and jowl bacon. This one has a little bit of thymus still on there. That's sweetbread. Okay, so that's coming off. But the jowl's ready to go. A lot of folks will just put this right into sausage, and that's fine too. If you're into making bacon, if you have my card, email me. I will send you a really simple brine type recipe that I use. I like it a lot. I have a philosophy that bacon should be fatty and salty. Absolutely. Okay, what are they doing at the grocery stores? It's lean and boring. Okay, so if you like fatty, salty bacon, you'll love my recipe. Okay, and you can always adjust it however you want. So, anyway, so now I've taken the jowl off, and now I'm going to use my rule of thumb again. I'm going to find, this is the scapula. That's the shoulder blade, the blade bone, okay? I'm going to use my rule of thumb, and I'm going to use a big thumb. Like a big thumb. Because I want to cheat down just a little bit further into the picnic. Right about there. Okay, so that's a big thumb. Let's go 2 thumbs today. Okay? And I'm going to go ahead and start cutting a little bit down in there. Now, I can't cut all the way through. Why? There's a bone. Okay? Anybody know what bone that is? What? Yeah, it's one of the leg bones, right? Let's just call it what it is. It's the leg bone. And actually, up here in the front shoulder, what's that? Humerus. That's the funniest bone in the carcass, right? The humerus. Arm bone. Okay? So actually, I'm right at the joint of the scapula and arm bone, or the blade bone and the arm bone. I'm going to cut right through there. I could disjoint it, but I have my saw today. Kim seems surprised that I showed up without any mechanical, electrical. I travel light. You know, I travel just like this, except for I do have one. I have a saw that's only about 15 inches. It fits in a carry-on, and I've literally traveled the world with that thing. Now I have to check it. I can't just set it in the seat beside me for some reason. But no, what's that? You might just cut the seat, and then United Airlines would be upset with me for another reason. So So yeah, I've very much taught myself to do everything with by hand. Don't clean your knives like that, please. I just have a really nasty habit. If I had a frock on, I'd probably be doing it on my shirt. I know, it's terrible. Just don't do that, but I do it. I do it all the time. I'm going to do it many times today. Okay, so there's our shoulder right here. This is the picnic shoulder. It's already been skinned, so I don't have a whole lot of extra work to do. A lot of times if you do buy in like whole picnics from a commercial operation, they'll go through the scalding process, so you'll still have all the skin, the rind on there, so you'd have to skin that. Okay, but this one's already been skinned. I can go ahead and usually what I do is I come right in here. This is the shoulder cushion, and I'm going to cut right in underneath there and find my scapula well, that's the edge of the scapula, my humerus bone. There's my humerus bone, and now I can start cutting away some of that shank meat. I don't want to cut way up here too far, because then I'm just going to have to cut it away anyway. You don't want super heavy connective tissue. What's connective tissue? Chewy stuff, right? Okay? And even though it's going to go through a grinder and ultimately cooked, I don't want a ton of that in there, because you're still going to get into some of those BBs of the really thick connective tissue, right? So anyway, so I'm cutting right about where I know that muscle's starting to quit. Come on this other side for the shank. Cutting that shank meat back. And then we have, this is the triceps muscle underneath. These pork bones make excellent stock if you're into making soups and things. And then when you're all done, then you make excellent dog chew toys. Pork, well, the ribs will splinter. You got to be real careful with that, huh? Yeah. The large long bones, if they're of a pig that's kind of about this size, shouldn't have too much trouble. Okay. So there's the arm bone. There's the humerus bone. This is the radius and ulna. So we have our radius and ulna. Now on pigs, the radius and ulna are fused together, and pretty much all of our four-legged creatures, the radius and ulna are fused together. Number one, because they don't need to do this. Okay, ours are separate because we need to be able to do this. Pigs don't need to do that. They do have kind of a little notch right here, so you can still notice the difference. The radius is the big section on this side of the leg, and then the ulna, that's the elbow. So now we're covering skeletal anatomy today. It'll be on the quiz later. Right, so there's the arm bone. Here's the boneless picnic. Boneless picnics are great for sausage making. They're not super great for a lot of other things. Now there are folks out there that would cure that entire piece and make a very small ham, literally a picnic ham. The reason it was a picnic ham is because to take a whole ham on a picnic would be a lot of meat. You think I'm joking? No, literally, it was a picnic ham because it was much smaller and could be transported easier. Okay? Now it's a boneless picnic ham, and then you would just chunk this guy up for making sausage. But that's my recommendation. The majority for this is making sausage. The commercial world mostly does that. You can absolutely braise or stew this, and it would still be really good. Just know that you would need to go for a long time because there's a lot of connective tissue in here. What's the connective tissue? Chewy stuff. And so we need to either grind it or cook it really, really low and slow to break all that down. But in a young animal, that connective tissue does what's called gelatinize, turns to gel. So it makes a really, really nice texture if you're into meat jello. You're into meat jello and you don't know it, okay? Meat jello's funny, right? All jello's meat jello if you really think about it. That's right. All right. Now we get into the picnic. So the picnic now pretty much just has the scapula in there, okay? I know that we have the flat side of the scapula right on this side, and so that's on the inside. You can actually feel the ridge of your scapula right there. So the ridge of the scapula is right about there, okay? I'm going to go ahead and I like to start on the flat side, just because my knife can kind of glide right along the edge of that. And the butt shoulder is an excellent one for, as I've already mentioned, slow cooking. If I did have a bandsaw, which I do have a little travel bandsaw, it's just a pain to carry and clean. But, and I definitely don't take that one on the airlines, it's pretty big. But if I had a bandsaw, I could cut off some chops from the shoulder. You get what's called blade chops. And they're very good. They do have a little bit of chew to them. And so overwhelmingly, the picnic shoulder just makes for really good slow cooking, braising, roasting, or smoked shoulder. And so I'm coming from both sides here, hitting that ridge of the scapula. Now I'm going to come up underneath and start peeling that scapula away. Now pig scapulas kind of make they have a big wide spot on the very top of the ridge. Most of our other four-legged creatures don't. And I think it's just because, pigs are bodybuilders, and so they need a lot of extra support to work on that. Here's our scapula now. We can pull a little bit of extra meat off of there. But now you can kind of see the blade bone, right? There's the ridge of that scapula, and then the flat side. Okay? And then if you have a canoe, you're going to need a bigger one. Go ahead and get a beef. Looks like a what? A duck foot? A little bit. Do you look at ducks a lot? I like looking at ducks. I think ducks are fun to look at. So now we have this boneless shoulder. What I like to do is usually just cut that sucker in half, but then it's all floppy. This is where, if you have some string, you can go ahead and tie this guy back up. So I'm going to tie these for whoever gets to purchase this later on. I'm going to leave most of that fat on there. On this side, I might trim a little bit on that side. But I'll do a butcher's knot so everybody can see. Ready? Under. Catch that. And pull that through. Did you see that? I'm not going to show you again. Nice thing about a butcher's knot is it kind of locks in. And then once you have that locked, you can go ahead and put a half over the top of that and really lock it. And now we're going to use a sausage tying technique and just make these halves like that. That guy kind of tight. Keeps it straight. Now you have to get the string straight, or otherwise it's not going to taste right. Everybody knows this, right?
You can choke on it.
You could choke on it. Now, if you see, I'm doing this all as one continuous string. So, originally I was taught, like, you tie a knot, you tie another knot, you put another one and another one. But yeah, to prevent anybody from maybe choking on that one that you missed, if you cut it all, or if you tie it all as one string, oftentimes it will also come off as one string. So then I'm going to come back around the other side here, give myself plenty of string. And now I'm going to run a line down this back side, and that's where I can straighten all my strings.
Yeah, I'm left-handed, would it be okay if I did that on the left?
Do you have left-handed knives?
Yes.
It's right next to your left-handed hammer? Yeah. I teach a meat fabrication class to seniors and graduate students. And I have one gal in there, she's maybe like 90 pounds soaking wet. Okay? But anyway, she's left-handed. And it's like breaking my brain. Because I'm showing her how to do everything, and then she goes and uses that other hand. What's up with that? Who's the left-handed? You're left-handed. Anybody else left-handed? Okay. Why?
It's the right line.
Seems like it's, the whole world is against you. No, it's interesting. So left-handed folks, if you're trying to teach them like just regular butchery on a table, just put them across from you, and it's mirror image. For whole carcass fabrication, I still haven't figured out how to teach her well, but thankfully she's really smart, and so she's figured it out.
My sister's a left-handed meat cutter.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's amazing. Now, ultimately, I mean, I make a joke about left-handed knives. There's no such thing as a left-handed knife, okay? So, as long as you have dexterity, you can go ahead and still do that. But there's your little pork shoulder roast, wrapped up, nice and tight, ready to go to market. Huh? I'll tie this other one later. Let's keep moving along. The other one actually, I mean, there's a little bit of looseness to it, not a whole lot. I will trim down. I like to take the fat layer down about to a half to a quarter of an inch of fat thickness. Now, I went a little deep on that one. For two reasons. Number one, I want that fat. I want all the extra fat for making sausage later. For those who like to make sausage, or if this were my pig and I was going to make sausage later, I want that extra fat. And if you leave too much on there, it does become a little bit soupy in the crock pot later on, and so you might as well capture that. Okay. So we'll come back and tie that guy later. All right. Then we have the middle section right here. This is called leaf fat. What can you do with leaf fat?
Render it.
You render it. You make lard, right? This is lard. So beef and sheep, you make tallow. Pigs, you make lard. It's the same thing. Okay. What's this?
Kidney.
That's a big kidney. How do you cook a kidney?
Oil.
Boil the piss right out of it, right? Okay. So that's like a joke. Now, I used to say, you boil it for a long time and you just throw it all out when you're done with this. I never had anybody that could make a kidney edible for me until just recently. I have a graduate student. She's native Chinese. She made a stir fry that, unless I told you it was kidney, you'd have never known. Now, it has a texture kind of like mushroom. And then if you prepare it right, and she does a lot to prepare it. She does a lot of carving to get some of those nodules out of there. But it was amazing. So you can make a kidney taste good, but you have to go through some certain steps to it. Okay? We'll save that leaf fat. Somebody wants that. We'll save the kidney if somebody wants to do a little experimenting. Okay? All right. Got a little bit more of this abdominal fat. Now this fat, you can see, it's not skeletal fat. It's definitely a different type of fat. And so I'm going to go ahead and pull that out because it's not going to make good bacon. So we'll pull that stuff out. We'll set it aside. All right. Next, I need to separate the loin from the side. The way you do that is, first off, you come down here and you find this muscle right here. Anybody know what muscle that is? No?
Tenderloin.
That's the tenderloin. Yeah. Do you know what the scientific name is? No, that's very close. The longissimus dorsi is right here. So the longissimus dorsi is long, longissimus, and it's dorsal, like dorsal fin, like flipper. Okay? The psoas major, this is the psoas major, P-S-O-A-S, has that silent P like my name. Some of you are thinking hard about that. Sometimes I say it has a silent P, kind of like my last name is actually pronounced, it's spelled Bass, but the B is silent. Anyway, we're going to go right to the edge of that tenderloin. Now let's talk about the tenderloin first off. Why is it so tender? It doesn't do a darn thing. If this is a piggy walking around out in the field, this is what they look like on the inside, walking around out in the field. What does it do? Nothing. So, the only time you'll see a four-legged animal, the reason why this is so tender is because it really doesn't do anything. The only time you'll see a four-legged animal use that muscle is if they're rearing. But you don't see piggies do that very often, right? So, horses do that. Yeah. That's why horse tenderloin's not as tender. We weren't supposed to eat the horse? Anyway, very tender piece of meat. Okay, we'll pull that out. So I'm going to go right to the base of that, make a mark. And then I'm going to come right over here and come almost 90 degrees off of that first vertebrae. Okay, this is called the chine bone. Come right off that, make a little mark. I'm going to go ahead and draw a line that follows the edge of all of that. Okay? And if I follow that edge, I kind of make a curved line. I'm going to cut into those ribs, but I don't need a whole lot of extra down here for the pork chops. I'm trying to save a lot of that side. So we're going to go ahead and cut through that. It's called a scribe cut. If you can make that in that curved nature. So cut down into there, follow my scribe cut up to here, and then I've hit rib bones. Now I have to cut with the saw. The key to cutting with the saw is to not cut the table underneath. Oh, you're not my class. I don't have to worry about that, right? When you're using the saw, don't cut the table! So pork ribs, I will say, they splinter, okay? They are kind of more fragile. Did I just get you? You're in the splash zone, you know. Good thing you got your safety glasses on. Yeah, I see that. So that's good for safety. This is where a bandsaw comes in nice because you can follow that curve a lot easier, but I got through it. Did good for a beef guy, huh? Cut that. Oh, and we have hit a little bit of scapula there. Come down around that. So now we have our loin and our side. We'll come back to, let's cut the loin. So the next thing on the loin, and you'll notice, again, I don't have my bandsaw with me. Number one, it's kind of awkward. Number two, I wanted to show you how to do all this without having to have fancy equipment. That's why I showed up with nothing electrical, okay? Because that stuff is expensive. This stuff is, I mean, they're not giving these things away, but they're not that expensive. This knife right here, if you bought just the single, probably about 17 bucks. If you bought a whole pack of 6 of them, it's going to be about 15 bucks a piece. This guy right here, getting close to 30, maybe a little over right now, but it's going to last you quite a while. These aren't like fancy Japanese-made, whatever, $300 knives. I don't want those. I'm too hard on things. I just want something I can use, has a good feel to it, and then I'll go ahead and sharpen it. Okay? The steel that I use, this is a two-sided steel, so I have a smooth side, and then I have a corrugated or coarse side, in case I really need to work up the knife. Saw right here, probably about 50 bucks. All right, so I got less than $100 worth of equipment here. A bandsaw is going to be almost $1,000, even if it's just a little tiny table one. All right, so, and they're a pain to clean. And I'm too lazy. Okay, let's just call it what it is. So I don't like cleaning that stuff, and so we're not going to. But you can still get a lot of really great cuts out of this without having to use a bandsaw. The bandsaw is nice if you want like bone-in chops. You don't need the bone to eat it. The bones are not tender at all anyway. So don't worry about that, okay? And if we can pull these bones off, they make really, really nice little ribs themselves. And so we'll go ahead and pull that stuff out. So this is just some connective tissue, a little bit of fat over the top. There's that tenderloin sitting there. So we're not going to be able to make T-bones and porterhouses in the pork fashion. That's okay. We're still going to make something really, really tasty, a pork tenderloin. Anybody ever roasted a pork tenderloin? They're really, really good. And it's like 20 minutes tops is all you really need. I mean, it does not take long. And they're super tasty, super tender, and actually really high yielding, as in you don't have to sit and whittle these things down like you do with beef. I'm cutting, this is not a how-to, by the way, I'm just cutting it kind of opposite so that you guys can see the process. Come up against the hip bone there, now in the back of the lumbar vertebrae. These are called transverse processes. If I were to make little T-bones out of this, that's the up and down part of the T on the T-bone, is the transverse process. Okay? Roll that little guy out there. I'm going to have to turn this so I get my orientation. Sorry.
If you were left-handed, you could do it the other way.
Yeah, I could have just gone like this, right? Or if I was any good, I could still do that. I'm not a switch hitter, unfortunately. So In all reality, though, in the large commercial plants, lefties really come in handy because if there are certain tasks, because animals are right-handed, left-handed sides. Okay, so you can actually go faster if you're left-handed on a right-handed side. Make sense? Okay, because everything's kind of angled and turned that way for you. So there's the little tenderloin. I don't really clean these up too much. I'll take a little bit of this adjacent fat off, maybe a little bit of the extra connective tissue. But I don't bother taking off too much of extra stuff because these little tenderloins, again, this pig was no more than 8 months old. Could have been 6, could have been 7, but no more than 8 months old. So they're very, very tender. So these little bits right here of connective tissue, there's a little silver skin right there. You won't hardly notice that after you go. Okay. What's a good degree of doneness for pork, by the way? What?
Medium.
145 is the recommendation. Here's the caveat. If it's a backyard pig in touch with the dirt, cook it. Cook it up to 160 degrees Fahrenheit. Why? If they can make contact with the ground, with the dirt, now they can pick up parasites. One in particular, trichinosis. Okay. If they're coming from a commercial operation, which I know this one did, they're raised indoors, usually on slats or concrete, and so they're not in touch with the ground. So they cannot complete that parasite cycle. Okay? That's why we can say, you can cook this to 145, and it's amazing. It's still going to be juicy. Right? If you have the backyard pigs, take it to a higher degree of doneness for safety purposes. There's the tenderloin. Okay? Then we're going to go ahead, and I'm going to find this last rib bone. And I don't normally do this unless I'm cutting by hand. But I find this last rib bone and go ahead and cut the loin into 2 pieces. The reason I'm doing that is because I want to get out those back ribs, but I need to chine the back ribs so that they're easier to prepare. Okay, so that's off. Now I can take my saw. If I don't do that, it's really hard to get these little pork back ribs cut. But I'm going to do what's called chine the back. And chining the back means I'm cutting so I can get my knife up underneath these rib bones right here, okay? And get all of this extra spinal column out of the way. The spinal column, the chine, is again an Old English term for chain. So if you look at it, it's links in a chain, links in a chine. Right? So we just still use that terminology. And really, like, this would be the one part where I do wish I had a bandsaw. But I got through it. Now I can go ahead and start loosening all that stuff up. And take these feather bones off. Backbones, feather bones, all that comes off. So now I'm left with almost a boneless loin. All I have to do next is remove these back ribs, the baby back ribs. If you go and look at pricing on back ribs, are they a cheap buy? Anybody know? No. It is unbelievable. It's kind of like the whole chicken wing thing. That's bones and feathers, guys. That's pretty much all chicken wings are. A little bit of skin.
Hopefully no feathers.
Look close.
Or don't.
Or don't, whatever. It ain't going to kill you. But it's like, those were throwaway items 20, 30 years ago. And now, they're one of the most valuable parts on a chicken. Back ribs. Similar thing. Now, I cut these in a classical style. I cut close to the back, or close to the ribs. If you go to, say, like a Costco, and you look at the back ribs, there's a ton of meat on these. What they're doing is actually gouging into the loin, because this is $4.50 a pound. This is $1.50 a pound. What has happened to this world? But it's what it is, right? It's because people are cooking though, I really do. I like them more in a classical style. I don't slow cook these ahead of time. I know there's philosophies on that, right? Slow cook it first so that it's fall off the bone. I don't like fall off the bone. That's a texture thing for me. Okay, I like it a little bit more dry and to nibble on. Okay, so that's off. I have a little bit of that scapula right there. I can go ahead and take that off right now since we're looking at what we're talking about. This is just mostly cartilage, scapular cartilage, but this is the remainder of that blade bone. Once this is out, now I have an entirely boneless front half of the pork loin. Once I have this, this is where now I can get in here and start rolling out that pork loin. And if I'm careful, I can actually leave a little bit of tail on that pork loin. Tail just means it's that little nub of fat at the bottom of the pork chop. It's so good. And you're sitting there and you're eating with somebody and they're like, oh, and they cut it away and now you're eating off of their plate too. That's food at my house. So now I'm just peeling this right out of this little pocket. Look at that, it's a little pork loin being born. Yeah. How nice is that? These are beautiful pork loins, by the way. I'm commenting on these because of the color. The darker the meat is on pork, the more flavorful and more tender it's going to be. A lot of that has to do with pH of the final meat. So we're not going to get too far into that. This is going to be a really, really tasty pork chop. I know that because it's like almost a reddish color. Okay, pork can go all the way to like almost as white as it's fat. That's going to be super dry. It's called PSE, pale, soft, and exudative. That was a problem in the 1990s with our show pigs. Like almost all of them were that way because they were bred for extremely high muscling, but they also carried along the stress gene that went along with that. Stress is the thing that causes a lot of that darkness or the lightness in the meat, and so we're trying to avoid that. So the darker that meat, the better off it's going to be. How do you like your pork chops? Like 2 fingers? Yeah. Okay. I like a nice thick pork chop. I know not everybody does, but I'll go ahead and just kind of cut these guys a good butcher's inch. Yeah? And this is a semi-boneless one. I got a little close to the rib on that one. Thanks for bringing the cutting wire, by the way, too. This is nice. There we go. All right. Fancy that one up just a little bit. There we go. And there's our rib end boneless pork chops. Okay? And these are the ones right up here that are closest to the shoulder. Those are the ones I'll fight you for. Yeah, because there's more fat, and you got that spinalis muscle, that calf muscle. It's super tasty. On the loin section over here, a couple things we can do. I'm going to go ahead and cut right here to just break into the sirloin because it does transition from one set of muscles to the next. So I find the very last lumbar vertebrae right there. I'll bust through that and I'll just barely nick that hip bone that's right there. Okay, now I can debone that and now I have a sirloin section. You can leave that as a roast, which makes an amazing roast by itself. Or you can go ahead and cut it into cutlets. They're usually not called sirloin chops. They're usually called sirloin cutlets. I don't know why. I still just call them sirloin chops. Into the back. Dorsal processes. How are we doing on time? What time you got? What's that?
You got 50 minutes.
I still have 50 minutes. Okay. Okay. There's that section of lumbar vertebrae out of there. So this is the section that if I were to cut that short loin like you guys saw with the beef, for those who were there, that's that same section right there. It's just on the picture. Okay. The transverse processes right here. If you've ever been to Applebee's and gotten the riblets, if you notice they don't look like ribs, and that's because they're not. They're riblets, as in let's not not talking about ribs anymore. Okay? If you go to Canada, it's actually a very popular item that you take the bandsaw right here, you cut these off, these little paddle bones. They're called dry ribs, and so they'll serve them in bars, and then they really roast them down. Really salty, but super tasty is just kind of like a little snack. Okay? All right, so now I have that latter part of the and so I can cut my lemon chops. This guy. See that just a little? I like to leave a bit of that pork fat on there, but you don't need too much. But about a ½ inch is really, really nice. Face that off, down on the sirloin end. Still a long chop. Not even close. See, I was a wrestler, I was not a basketball player, so I had close contact kind of stuff. I didn't have to worry about the long distance thing. Little loin chops. Actually, these are not little loin chops, these are daddy loin chops. Good. And these actually have a bit of marbling in them too. So anybody who's sat through any discussion that I've ever had on meat science, I always have to talk about the marbling effect, because marbling, little flecks of fat in the meat, helps with flavor, tenderness, juiciness, all of the above. Okay? Super, super tasty. And so, sorry?
It looks like a cheesy.
Yes, it does. That's exactly right. It does. It melts down and makes it easier for our teeth to go through. So, so that marbling can be found in pork as well. Not all pork producers or pig producers focus on marbling. And I think that's, I'm going to get up on my soapbox for just a little bit and say I think that's wrong. I think if they spent more time talking about marbling in pork chops, we wouldn't be selling loins for $1.50 a pound. Right? That would be my contribution to the pig world. Is let's stop that silliness. Let's focus more on marbling, and especially color. And we have standards. I didn't bring them with me. I meant to, but they're on my desk. But we have color standards that we can hold up and measure color. Okay? So when we export product, especially to Southeast Asian countries where we send a lot of meat products from the United States, they will pay more for that darker pork chop. And they will pay more for more marbling. And then we just eat all the really cheap, lean stuff here. I don't know. Just how things go sometimes. Alright, so there's our loin chops. End to end. I love pork loin chops.
Which pork chop would be superior, the one over the shoulder or the loin?
Yeah. If you ask me, that's the superior one. For me. But I love fat. And if you also look at this, compared to the one closer to the end of the loin, it's darker reddish in color. Okay. It's all still the same muscle. Like literally, that's the same muscle as that. It's just a different location. And so different metabolism was happening when it was okay. Good question.
If I'm making hamburger with a deer, is it better to have tallow or lard?
It just depends on what you have available. I just think it's better to add something because it's so lean, right? So if you have pork fat, that's great. Pork fat does a little better as far as like making sausage. So if you're making sausage with that deer, pork fat's probably going to be superior. If you're making burgers, beef fat's probably going to be better.
And which lasts longer in the freezer, pork or beef?
They should both be about the same. You should be turning that freezer over every year. Yeah, don't archive meat. Okay, it's not a museum. It's a freezer. So, now freezers, I mean, once it's in a freezer, it's going to be safe indefinitely, but your flavors will start to change. And that's regardless of the species, really. Okay? As long as it's packaged really tight and you don't have light on it, you should be at least good for 2 years. But my recommendation is turn that freezer over every year. Make sure you're emptying that thing out. Otherwise, you probably put too much in there. You need to find more friends.
Eat more.
Or just eat more. Or just eat more. Okay? I'll go ahead and debone this sirloin section now. I got just a little bit of leg bone for leg muscle. Around sirloin.
Hey, you talked about knives, but if you want to keep a sharp knife whenever you're working, otherwise you're fighting, right?
Exactly. If you feel like you're working hard cutting meat, you're probably working too hard. Your knife needs to be sharp. You'll eventually start to have wrist problems, and then elbow problems, and shoulder problems if you're not keeping your tools sharp. And that goes with saws. Yeah. Now saws, that's not something you're really going to sharpen. You just need to get a new blade. Bandsaw blades can be sharpened, but I don't know anybody that does that on a commercial level. But yeah, keep your knives sharp. And again, I mean, that's a $15 knife. I can get a lot done with this thing. Anytime I hit bone with that knife, I use the steel, about 22 degrees. So 90 degrees, half of 90 is 45, half of 45 is 22. So that's kind of how you remember that, right? You don't need a protractor for this. 22 degrees, and then you get the entire length of the blade on both sides. The biggest problem I see is people just kind of go on one side and keep going on one side. And all you're doing is curling over that microscopic edge. And now you're just fighting yourself. Okay? So you got to go both sides with it. And usually, if you maintain your knife, like 3 times on both sides, then you should be in pretty good shape. Okay? If not, that's when, if I've been working really hard with the knife and I need to put a better edge on it. This one has that kind of more corrugated, coarse edge to it. And so what we're trying to do is take all those little microscopic points that are on that knife and straighten them back out. Okay? And so by going one side, it does that. The other side does that. Sometimes if you're not straight with that, it starts to all curl over to one side. And that's when you need to probably use a stone. This doesn't take any metal off, it just straightens. Okay? There are the diamond impregnated steels that those are more honed, and so that's actually going to take metal off every time you use them. Just microscopic little things. Okay? I don't use those. I used to. I don't really use those anymore. I feel like I can have a longer lasting edge if I just take really good care of when I use the steel and my frequency. And I don't think you can overdo it as long as you're hitting it with the right direction. And every time you hit bone or cutting surface, or even worse, metal on metal, like oftentimes you just got a piece of stainless steel down. If you hit that, if I nick against here, I'll definitely go ahead and re-steel my knife. Just because now you definitely hit something hard enough that it's starting to bend over a section of that knife. All right? Sirloin. I'm going to go ahead and leave this one as a roast. I'll tie this one up toward the end. But we're going to go ahead and leave that as a roast because it makes an amazing little roast. I'll knock a little bit of fat off. These as chops or as cutlets, they almost become a little ungainly, so it's just harder to manage. So I just like them as a roast. And you can go right to the crock pot with something like this. Just remember, this is going to be a little leaner. It's a lot of big, lean muscles. Or if you do if you do have a smoker, go to a smoker and take it to about 145 internal temperature, and then you slice that. It's a really, really nice roast. Okay? All right. Now we're getting into kind of more of our curing items. Now, reality is you can cure just about any of this. The shoulder, you can make what's called a cottage bacon or rasher bacon, and that's where you're actually curing the shoulder and making. In the United States, bacon comes from the belly. In the rest of the world, bacon comes from just about anywhere. As long as it's an English-speaking country, it's all bacon as long as it's cured. This would be called shoulder bacon or rasher bacon in Ireland, England. Belly bacon they call streaky bacon. It's got streaks of fat. So just a difference in is it cured, is it not cured? Okay. All right. So on that section, we need to take this down and make it a belly, not just a side. Okay. Now, if you are able to scald a pig, and so you leave the rind on, that actually makes a superior bacon because you're not losing quite so much during the smoking process. It'll protect a lot of that. And then once you smoke it, that rind just kind of almost peels right off. Okay? Once you get it to a high enough degree of doneness, 120 degrees internal temperature, that's enough to kind of melt some of the connective tissue, the collagen that's keeping that rind attached, and it just peels right off. You can still make an amazing bacon out of something like this, especially if you skinned it, but it has a lot of extra fat, which is good to see. Okay, so to turn this into a belly ready for baconing, we're going to take off this muscle right here. This is the diaphragm. This is the breathing muscle. We call it the skirt steak in our beef animals, and we still call it a skirt steak. It's just there's not much to it on a pig, so a lot of times that just goes into sausage. Okay. Then, we're going to go ahead and take these ribs off. These are the spare ribs. We're going to come here to the very last spare rib. And I'm trying to make sure that my knife is bouncing off of those ribs. The point of my knife needs to be bouncing off those ribs. I don't want to be cutting down into the bacon for a couple of reasons. Number one, I want to leave as much meat there as I can because of the value. But then number two, if I score any of that belly underneath, once you slice the bacon, it starts to fall apart. Okay? Any of those marks that you make down there makes it so the slices lose their integrity. You'll also notice I'm pretty much making everything boneless. Bone takes up a lot of room in a freezer. So I'm not one to just save a bunch of bone. If you're going to save the bone to make stock, do it quickly. Because bone takes up a lot of room. There's always the argument, is a bone-in chop or bone-in steak going to taste better? And under blind taste tests, people cannot tell the difference between a bone-in and a boneless steak or bone-in and boneless chop. The difference is the degree of doneness next to that bone. And if you're talking about grilled items, it's going to be a lower degree of doneness, or more rare, closer to that bone, because the bone acts as an insulator. So, we're trying to, so if you cook, like, say, to a medium degree of doneness, it's going to be medium rare right next to that bone. And that's why it tastes different. And that's probably why you like it more, which also means you like a medium rare steak. Okay? So that's kind of the theory behind it. Now, bone also looks really good on a plate. Okay? So don't negate the fact that it's not leaching boniness flavor into the meat, but it does look really nice. And you eat with your eyes. And especially if you're trying to make a presentation of some sort to make it look really nice, go ahead and get that bone in there. I don't, because I don't want to store a bunch of bone. I just move on. Yeah?
You think the reason why bone tastes better with that concept is because it's extra weight?
Oh yeah, yeah. Bone definitely adds extra weight. And if we can sell bone as steak, there's a lot more value to it, for sure. Okay? Versus taking the bone, and I set them right in the trash there, but the big processors, they'll grind it up, they'll sell it as meat and bone meal for livestock feed or soil amendments, but the value now is extremely low compared to these elements. But really out of this pig, we're not going to lose a lot of bone. Like, I'm not going to bother with that spinal column. Somebody's going to choke on that, so I'm getting that out of the way. The long bones are good for making stock, so if somebody wants to take those or feed them to the pigs, not pigs, feed them to the dogs. Pigs will eat it too, but feed it to the dogs, that's fine. And then the back, or the ribs, of course, we save a lot of those. Okay, so we'll come back to the ribs. Last thing I'm going to do on this belly here, now it's a belly, is I find this little triangle of fat right about there on the flank end. I'm going to cut right about there, square that off. And now we pretty much have a belly ready for making bacon. I'll also just kind of square this teeth line edge, just so it makes a more consistent bacon, but that guy's ready to go. And that's going to be some hearty bacon right there, because there's a nice layer of fat right about there. Yeah! Huh? All right. Okay. You can cure the whole belly just like that. My recommendation is, because I do this in a fridge downstairs in my basement, okay? And you got the crisper drawers downstairs in the basement fridge, right? Nobody put vegetables in that stuff. If you are white, right, you should be eating the vegetables upstairs. So, I take those crisper drawers, get them nice and clean, and as long as they hold water, they'll hold brine. Cut this guy in half, and they fit right in those crisper drawers. And now they're not taking up room for beer and stuff, right? You gotta make sure you keep your priorities straight. The brine is really, really simple. It's salt, sugar, water, and then the cure salt. And so the cure salt is sodium nitrite. Doesn't take a lot, and that's going to give you that pinkish color. It's going to extend the shelf life on all of it. It's going to give you that cured meat flavor, all of the above. So it's a good thing. And so very, very simple. You just got to mix that really well so it's all in suspension. Drop that guy into the crisper drawer, and then I like to take a gallon Ziploc. I have some gallon Ziplocs over here. If you don't have one at home, you're welcome to take one with you. Fill it up with water, and then that will keep those bellies submerged. Think about that, right? Because this is a lot of fat. What does fat do in water? It floats, okay? And especially in a really salty brine, it's going to really be boiling. So I fill those gallon Ziplocs up with water in case they break, but fill it up with water, and then if you need to, you can set something on top of that. But I want to make sure that that belly stays fully submerged for about 2 weeks in the brine. Take it out, put it in the smoker, take it to about 120 degrees internal temp on a really, really low temperature, and then you're done. Chill it and slice it. I actually will leave it in sections. I'll cut sections like that, and then I'll just slice it as I need it in the kitchen. It's very impressive to some people. Yeah?
What's the difference between sodium nitrate and nitrite?
Oh, good question. Do we have a whiteboard here? We can get into chemistry. So, sodium nitrate and nitrite, very similar, but they are different. Okay, I know that because they're spelled different. But nitrite is NO2. So it's nitrogen with 2 oxygens. Nitrate is NO3, which means it takes longer for that cure to do its job. Ultimately, there's going to be lactic acid bacteria in here. As soon as this meat is exposed to anything, it's getting bacteria on it. Okay? Lactic acid bacteria, totally fine. We intentionally put it into yogurt. Okay? That's the tang in yogurt. It's lactic acid producing bacteria. Well, they also will convert nitrate to nitrite. Yeah. So you can use nitrate, but honestly, nitrate is harder to find. So sodium nitrite, almost all pink cure salt, make sure it says cure on there, like the Himalayan pink salt is not sodium nitrite. That's contaminated salt is really what it is. I've seen people, well, it's a more pure salt. No, it's not more pure. Salt, sodium chloride is white. Why is it pink now? Something else is in there, right? It's just different metals. It's fine. It's not going to hurt you. But it doesn't have the nitrite in it. Nitrite comes naturally. However, this is just a more purified form, but it comes naturally. You can get it from celery juice, and that's how we use the, if you ever see packages that say uncured bacon or uncured hot dogs, the chemistry is exactly the same. It just didn't come from the purified form of sodium nitrite. It came from celery juice powder, which is still nitrite. Any green leafy vegetables have very, very high levels of nitrites in them. Okay? So you could also use something like that. You just don't know how much you're getting at that. So sodium nitrite, it's very, very tiny amounts is all you need to be very effective. Nitrate is an unconverted version. And when you use nitrate, it's if you're going to say, like, make a prosciutto style, a dry cured ham. So it's going to take months instead of, in this case, days or weeks. How's that for an answer?
Exceeds all my expectations.
You've done it, boy.
Good.
Boy.
Yeah? Good. Powerful. Nobody clapped. But if I get an amen by the end of this, I'll be happy. And that's not good. I just lost all credibility, didn't I? 5 seconds more. It's groundwork now. It is groundwork. Hey, you know what? That's our doorstop chop, which wasn't that one was not in great shape anyway. So we're gonna go ahead and do this, and that way nobody has any accidents. Because I don't know how clean Kim made this floor earlier today. So we're just gonna go ahead and let that one go. And that's enough of my showboating. All right, this is almost a set of spare ribs. Now this is spare ribs, but I wouldn't want to eat them like this. Because it has all this sternum right here, and it has a lot of what's called costal cartilage. Costal cartilage is you get stuck between your teeth. Okay, so I want to trim it down. So I find where it hinges, see? That's the cartilaginous tissue at the base of the rib bones. Cartilage, I can cut through with my knife. He's a magic knife. No, it's not. It's cartilage, which is not bone. You know how I know it's not bone? Because it's spelled different. Keep up! Jeez! But now, once I barbecue that, I can just go right in between those rib bones. I won't have to bother with any of that other stuff getting in the way. They're easy to do. Once you take that sternum and costal cartilage off of those, now you have St. Louis style spare ribs. That's what those are. Okay? Baby back ribs or back ribs, and then St. Louis style spare ribs. Trim. Then the last little bit. How are we doing on time? Great. Also means about approximately what time is it?
You got 30 minutes.
You got 30 minutes. Excellent. Thank you. Okay. Lots of time. So, last little bit here. So if we were to make a traditional whole ham, we really wouldn't do a whole lot with this. Okay? I'm going to take out this H bone, that hip bone, but then after that, you just brine it or inject it. That's how we do most hams now in this country. We'll either take a single injection needle and take a brine, and jam it right in there and pump it up as much as we can. You usually put about 10 to 15% of its original, what we call green weight, to add to that. Because you're going to lose that during the smoking process or the brining process anyway. Okay? But it's also incorporating a lot more of that. If you just submerge this into brine, it's going to take almost a month, probably, to fully brine that. Okay? If you just do a dry coating, which is more of like a prosciutto style, an Italian style, where you're just going to hang it for about 9 months to dry, that too is several months of that dry cure that's going to be on the outside that takes a long time for it to go to the inside. Okay? You think about it, I think it's about 1 inch a week if you're just doing a surface coating. And so that's many inches right there. Okay, that it has to penetrate through. All right. But the Italian prosciutto style, which I've made a number of those, you're hanging them in a cool environment anyway for 9 months, almost a year, to get them to dry enough percentage. Anyway, I'm going to go ahead and take that H bone out, and I'm going to debone this whole ham, or this whole leg. It's not a ham yet. I'm going to debone this whole leg. It'll be easier for whoever takes this home. You can still make ham with it. You'll have smaller pieces, and they'll brine a lot quicker. But also, a lot of folks don't realize fresh pork leg makes amazing roasts, cutlets. Like you can, that's, anybody familiar with schnitzel? Like true German schnitzel? Yeah, you're cutting thin strips of that leg. You pound it out, bread it, fry it. That's amazing. Yeah, yeah. It's worth it, right?
Absolutely.
With a mountain of sauerkraut. When they bring out, when I say a lot of sauerkraut, and they come out, I'm like, no, I said a lot. Because I like it. Anyway, I'm going to take that H-bone out next. So the H-bone has a little hole in it. Carve that hole out. That's the obturator foramen. The muscle that's sat right in here is called the obturator muscle. It's also known as the oyster. The H-bone sits in there like a cupped hand. So it's sitting there kind of like this, so I'm keeping my knife going down and around like that. Eventually I get, here's the socket, the ball and sockets joint, okay? That's how my hip articulates, right? I have to pop through this heavy tendon, like right there, and that really helps to loosen that H-bone. Why is it called the H-bone? Okay, so, again, this is the bone on the edge of the leg. An old English term would have called that an H. It's the H of the leg. Does that make any sense? A-I-T-C-H. A-I-T-C-H, and that's how you spell H-bone. Is that how they teach you in school? How to spell H-bone? No. What are they teaching you? Yeah, me too. We're not teaching you butchery, huh? We need more butchery in grade school. Can't have knives in school. Well, what if we just call them tools? There's the H-bone out. There's a little hole in the H-bone. There's the socket. And if I'll leave this up here so you can kind of feel it if you want to. It's super slippery. That means it had plenty of synovial fluid, which means it had good joint lubrication. So it turns out there was nothing wrong with the hip on this paper. We're going to need a good bed. All right, so now that that's out, I'm going to take this top inner, this is the cushion of the leg off. I'll go ahead and knock this a little bit of flank and collar fat back here. All that is great trim for sausage later. And then I can come in here and just, I find the top of the cushion, right there. Go just a little bit deeper. There's the hamstring muscle. Ha ha! He said ham. So this is the inner cushion, top of the leg. So this, if this were a beef animal, this would be top round. Quite literally, because you take the H-bone out first. This is on top, top round. Meat science, huh? Yeah. We do not put a lot of thought into this stuff. No time for that. Therefore, the bottom would be the bottom round.
So which is more tender, the top round or the bottom round?
Top round. But on a piggy, it really doesn't make a lot of difference because they're so young and they're so tender. All of these muscles are extremely tender. Like, quite frankly, when we make this into ham, and then we slice it, we're not doing it any favors because we're not cutting it against the grain most of the time. When you cut meat against the grain, it becomes more tender. That piece of meat becomes more tender. And most of the time, when you're slicing ham from a whole, say, bone-in ham, you're not orienting against the grain. You might be orienting against the longitudinal axis of the leg. But all these muscles are going all kinds of different directions. By doing this, now, if I want to, and I'm going to because I can cut against the grain. Now I can cut a little leg cutlet. It's super tender. Yeah, that's how you make your. So that's where you take that one hammer that's in your kitchen, right? The meat hammer, and you pound it out, bread it, fry it. It's amazing. Absolutely incredible. love schnitzel. Good schnitzel is hard to beat. And really, if you think about it, it's blue-collar food. It's chicken fried steak in pork form. Okay? It really is. Makes an amazing little roast as well. And I'll go ahead and start down this leg bone. This is the femur bone. Up onto the femur right here. We have the patella. That's the kneecap. I'm looking for the really heavy seam of connective tissue that will separate the bottom or outside leg from the knuckle, which is right there. Now, this little knuckle, beef animal, also known as the sirloin tip sometimes. This does make a nice little roast. If you smoked it, it'll shred, kind of like the shoulder would on a pork animal. Has a lot of different muscles in there. Okay, so I wouldn't necessarily just cut this into little cutlets because there's a lot of seams of connective tissue. But if you slow roast that, it'll be really tasty in its own right. The other thing is, you could cure that and still make a small boneless ham. In fact, most of our what we call restructured boneless hams that we make at Vandal Meats, we take all of the little knuckles right here. We'll cure them, we'll inject them, we'll brine them, we'll cure them, we'll put them through a tumbling process, so it's vacuum chamber, but it's also slowly turning, like a really slow turning cement mixer. And what that's doing is it's activating a lot of the proteins, the salt-soluble proteins, on the outer surface of that muscle of this meat, which once you put them into like a tight netting and cook that, they'll glue themselves together. It's all naturally done, just with a little salt and mechanical action. Okay? And that's how we can make it. Sorry? Yes, it's already been brined. Yeah. And then you go through that mechanical action. It's the salt that's really doing the work. The tumbling just really helps along the process. You net all that back together, and then you can have a bigger ham, and you can just start slicing off for like deli meat. Okay? So it makes for a really good ham that way. Or if you're at home and you just have these by themselves, I would just do one at a time. Okay? Because that's still a lot of meat that you can have cured. Right? It's all boneless. Okay, so that sits there. Then we have this is the hamstring. So the eye, the leg eye, or the round eye of round. As opposed to the eye of round on the beef, the eye of round on the piggy is very tender. On the beef, it's not. It's super chewy. So again, makes for a really nice little roast. I've used these for skewers, for like shish kebab kind of stuff. Really tasty that way. Or just leave it as a nice little roast by itself. And then we'll get into the last bit of this leg here. There's the Achilles tendon. Sorry?
Part on your arm.
The Achilles tendon? It's hard on my arms? I'm okay. Long as my knife sharp, should be okay. That's why I hold it like that, so I keep my wrists straight. Depending on the action that I'm trying to do, I'll go to different angles with my knife. I've had a lot of people comment on the way that I steal my knife. They said they've never seen somebody push it. It's always like hibachi chef. That's a great show. It doesn't necessarily always give you a sharp knife. So nice and slow, deliberate actions. And if you're pushing it, you're not coming towards yourself. So it's just something I picked up a habit of it. Working with a lot of the big commercial operations where they require everyone to push it away from them, and so it's become kind of a habit of mine, which is, I think, a good habit to and slow and deliberate. I'm not trying to make sushi in front of you. So this is just a little bit, this is what's called the heel. That's usually going to go into trimmings for sausage. Now we get out to the outer leg. And the outer leg does have this big seam of chewy connective tissue right here. Not a bad idea to go ahead and skin that off. Again, they're so young that it's probably not that big of a deal. Especially if you're making sausage, I wouldn't bother with it, but there's a section of it that's just a little chewy. If you're going to leave it as a whole roast, go ahead and take that down. I've also made, so you asked the question, which is more tender, inside, outside? The inside is more tender. The outside is more flavorful. So we cut down right about here. You can see it there. Well, it's kind of hard to see on this one, but it definitely has a little bit more marbling than you would see in the outside or in the inside. Okay, and that marbling is going to bring that flavor along. Okay, so nice little leg roasts. You can absolutely still go ahead and you can either cut it up into cubes, make shish kebabs or skewers or what have you. Slice it for schnitzel. Leave it as a roast. Or you can cure it and still make a ham. Okay, it's just a boneless ham. Alright? And then you have just this last little bit right here. You have the leg. Anybody ever watch Dexter? That's a bad reference. You see how easy that was, right? You worked way too hard on that show. Anyway. Not that bad. Get into our last little shanks right here. I like deboning the shanks to show people the hind shank structure on a pig. It's kind of cool. So I mentioned, or I showed you, that the foreshank, the radius and ulna are fused. And on the hind shank, they're absolutely fused, but not entirely. So they're fused on the ends. But they kind of have this chicken wing appearance to them. This is the tibia and fibula. So they're fused on the ends. And you think about it, nature's pretty brilliant. So four-legged creatures, very heavy ends, usually very heavy animals. And so nature starts fusing these bones together so that they can support that kind of weight. All right? However, the hind leg on our four-legged creatures, even though it can be very big, 2/3 of the animal's weight is carried in the front. And so it makes a lot of sense that the radius and ulna are fully fused, and the hind leg doesn't have that full fusion. And the hind leg is going to have more pivoting action that has to happen, and so nature allowed for that. On sheep and goats, it's 2 distinct bones, but the bigger your animal gets, the four-legged animals, the more fused they become. You should see like the Brachiosaurus, the Apatosaurus that they have in the Chicago airport. The skeleton. Nobody looks at like a dinosaur skeleton and say like, I could make a lot of sausage on that. Could you imagine? Right? You should go to a zoo with me. Go to the hippopotamus exhibit. I'm like, schnitzel. Lots and lots of schnitzel. All right? What I'm going to do in the remaining time is just kind of work this stuff up and answer any questions you may have. Or thoughts or comments. Yes?
What happens if you are off finished with the cow and you need to put their horns somewhere? Where will you put their horns?
You're going to have to say the first part again.
What happens if you're finished with the cow and your horns?
Say, if you let the cow?
Finished with the cow.
If you're finished with the cow. Okay, all right. Finished with the cow. As in, I am done with you, cow.
No. Okay, cutting it.
Cutting it. Got it. Okay. And what do you do with the horns?
Yeah.
First off, I don't raise cows with horns. They scare me. But if they have horns, yeah, you could take it to somebody who does like taxidermy or European mounts. They'll put the whole head in with little beetles. They'll eat all the meat off of there. It comes out real nice and clean. And then you make a hat rack.
No, what happens if you don't want to do that? And you don't want to
Oh, then you take it out in the back 40 and let the Coyotes get after it.
Raven.
Huh? Ravens will do it, yeah. You let nature deal with the rest of that. Nature. It's a beautiful, terrifying thing.
I just want to use the horns as like a weapon.
You want to use the horns as a weapon? That's a different class. I've never had that question. I've done this a lot. I've never had that question. I love that question. Good question.
Get a stick.
You're gonna need to saw the horns off, and then you're gonna have to mount it on a stick or something. Does that make sense? Or you turn it into a powder horn. Yeah, so it's a weapon accessory. What are you guys doing up here? That you need to make weapons out of? Cattle horns. You never know. You just never know, right? That was a great question. I appreciate your question. Other thoughts? Questions?
Repeat once more the name of the knife you use in the smaller.
Sure, yeah. Okay, this is a boning knife. This is the Frost Mora brand. It's a Swedish-made knife. I really like the handle on this one. Most of the commercially made knives out there, most of the blades are very, very similar. This one has a little bit more flex than, say, a Victorinox would. Okay, but this is a semi-stiff or semi-flex knife. They're great for going in and around bones. Okay, so, and this is a 5-inch version. They do make a 6-inch. I really like the 5-inch because I feel like you can really get in deeper in, say, behind those neck bones and things. So I got a little bit more precision. So that's the boning knife, 5-inch boning knife. This is an 8-inch breaking knife. This is the one I travel with. One that I use at the meat lab is a 10-inch, so it's just a little bit broader. Better for ribbing beef carcasses. So it's a little bit more utilitarian that way. This one's easier to just roll up and down. And it's a better weapon, the bigger one, yeah. If you're going to a knife fight, bring a big knife, right? Or a horn. So, and this is the Victorinox, so the Swiss made. And again, it comes down to your personal feel. Victorinox have a little bit longer handle. There's the Dexter, which is a British-German mix. Their handles are just a little bit shorter, so if you have a more compact hand, then they seem to work well for folks. The steel, this is Sheffield's made, or it's an English-made, still Victorinox brand, but it's made in England. This is a dual surface steel. So again, it has that smooth edge and then it has the rough edge. This is full stainless. You can get the ones that are super polished, but they're still a green steel that you have to oil. You have to dress it constantly. So you take a piece of emery cloth. You're always polishing that thing down, and then you got to oil it so it doesn't rust. As soon as it starts to pit, you might as well just throw the steel away. It's making it worse. Yeah. And this is for catching cats. So, no, that's bad. We're recording this, aren't we? Yeah, that's good. Anyway. Meat hook, this is a much smaller meat hook. So this is, I think, like a 2-inch shank. I use a 3-inch shank offset at work. So this one goes between my 4 fingers here. My offset would have the shank over here, and so it would just go between right here, and so I just get a better grip on it. That is left and right-handed, by the way, in that case. So doing ninja moves. Answer your question? Excellent. Any other questions? Well, I just kind of make piles here. Go ahead and tie this roast. Any thoughts?
Can you give us any information versus like natural nitrites versus like the urine salts?
Yeah. So nitrates, nitrites, as we addressed, right? Nitrates are, so if you look at the labels, most labels for nitrate is cure salt number 2 or Prague powder number 2. Nitrite, sodium nitrite, is number 1. Number 1 is by far the easiest one to find. Number 2, you actually have to do a little searching, or you have to go to meat supply stores. I personally prefer to use the purified versions of sodium nitrate and nitrite. I know exactly what I'm working with. They've come a long way with the more natural plant-based versions. Those are celery juice powder. They still go through a lot of processing to get to that level because celery doesn't have powder in it. So there's a lot that goes into it. And 10 years ago, you didn't really know how much nitrite you were putting in with the celery juice powder. It was just kind of like, oh, it's enough, I guess. Now they've really come, it's a lot more precise. So if you choose to use the plant-based versions of that, it'll tell you exactly how much to put in. So in the end, it's the exact same chemistry. It's nitrite. It has nothing to do with the sodium part. It has to do with the nitrite part. And that's the nitrogen plus 2 oxygens. That, by lactic acid conversion, so lactic acid bacteria, if you put it into the brine, they're still there. That will convert to nitric oxide, not nitrous oxide. That's what the dentist uses. That's N2O. We're converting it to nitric oxide, NO. Nitrogen plus 1 oxygen. What that does, it binds, just like oxygen does, to the red stuff in the meat called myoglobin, it's the protein. And it fixes that pink color. It's actually a stronger bind than oxygen is. Okay? That's why it helps meat last so much longer. Okay? Curing, whether you use the plant-based or you use the purified version, nitrate or nitrite, the purpose of it is to prevent botulism. Clostridium botulinum cannot survive in an environment with nitric oxide. And that was the original purpose, and it was found by accident by humanity. Because we would use salts that were impure. We would use salt that was either mined from the ground, that was not pure sodium chloride, or even more common, sea salt. Sea salt has a lot of impurities, including nitrites. And so sea salt is a source, but again, depending on where you get it, it's going to be at different levels. And so if you're going to use sea salt, I would still recommend using either the celery juice powder or the sodium nitrite. That's way bigger than your question, but did I answer your question?
That's awesome.
Okay.
So basically what I'm hearing is that no matter what, you're curing your meat, you're curing your meat.
It's still curing.
Nitrates don't matter.
Yes, and you know,
Okay.
this is something that even the more quote-unquote natural meat processing companies are trying to change the terminology, because if you don't use actual sodium nitrite in the purified form, and you use celery juice powder, it has to be labeled uncured. And that's misinformation, to use a term of the zeitgeist. It's not true. It is absolutely still cured. It's just cured using a different source. But it's the nitrite that they're trying to source. Okay. How about that? Other questions? That was a great question.
Some of the best bacon I've made, we put the cure and the meat in a Ziploc bag.
Yep.
And I turned it over. Every time I opened the refrigerator and got a beer, I turned it over.
That's a lot.
It's a hell of a pretty often.
Quite often.
Anyway, but made really good bacon.
Yes. Yeah.
Excellent.
Yeah, so that turning process, that kind of helps to move the juices around,
Yeah,
especially
right.
if you're in a contained environment like a bag. So that's a great idea, because you want to get that consistent application of the cures, right, of the salts. Yep. So, yeah, important to do that. There's a lot of folks that, you know, if you're making like a dry cured bacon too, so you're just putting the dry ingredients on the outside, no water, it's a good idea to flip those every once in a while as well.
Yeah, I made enough juice to keep it.
Yeah. A lot of that juice will come out. Well, and interestingly, if you look at it, over time, so after like 2 days, there'll be tons of water that comes out. And then, at the end of like 2 weeks, almost all of that water comes back in. That's called osmotic pressure.
And it's a good excuse to get another beer.
But it's a good excuse to get another beer. But we'll need a chalkboard to talk about osmotic pressure. But that's natural chemical balance, that nature's just trying to find the balance of salt and water. And so it's a really cool experiment. Not everybody's excited about osmotic pressure as I am, but I think it's pretty fascinating.
Dr. Bass would like to invite you back next year to teach us about that.
About osmotic pressure?
Yes, please.
I'll do that.
We have time for another question if you have anything. Anything else? Thank you so much
Thank you.
for being here.
Thank you.